what was the process of you leaving the NWA to accept the WWF's offer to bring you in? And were you going to be brought in to join Demolition straight away, or did you just know you were going into the company?
Well, my dream was always to get to the WWF, but I was really happy in the NWA in Crockett Promotions because I had all my friends there. I loved it. It was top-notch wrestling. Every night, you're in sellout crowds everywhere, good paydays, everything. And Ivan and I were working an angle with the Rock and Roll Express, and the matches were phenomenal. And we did hour-long matches with these guys every night all over, and we really built this for the Great American Bash or whatever the big show was. So I was all excited to be in that match, me and Ivan against the Rock and Roll Express. And about a week before the match, Dusty came up to me and says, Barry, we're going to take you out of the match. We're going to put Nikita in there, and you're going to have a match with Sam Houston. And I told Dusty, I said, Dusty, that's not fair. It's ridiculous. I've worked the whole angle, me and Ivan. And Dusty says, yeah, but you three interlock and you're the 6-man champions and, anybody can wrestle anybody. I said, yeah, but that's not the point. I built this up with Ivan in every town, everywhere for this match. That's what it was for. And he says, yeah, this is what Jim wants. He says, you're going to wrestle Sam, but you're going to make the same amount of money that they're going to make in their match. I said, okay, but I said, this isn't right. But I loved working with Sam Houston. So I thought, okay, this is great. We're going to have a great match. Well, we ended up having a great match. Those guys had a great, it was a huge success. So everybody's happy. About a week later, we're doing interviews at the office where we do all the promos, and I get my paycheck. And I look at my check and I'm going, holy shit, this is a sellout crowd, a huge place. I got paid like $3,500. I can't remember exactly what the name is, or what it was. And I looked over at Ivan. I go, Ivan, I normally don't ask this, but would you get paid? He says, crush, and he knew when I said I got $3,500 and he's looking at his, he got, 15 grand or whatever they got, I don't know what it was. And he goes, Barry, he says, I got a pretty good payday, but I just as soon not say or anything. And I said, those son of a bitches, So excuse my language.
No,
I
no,
don't
you're
normally
fine.
swear. But this was in my career, this was what everybody has taught me, that promoters are scum of the earth. They steal from you, they lie from you, they do it. And it all came to that point right there. And I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do? Well, Eddie Sharkey always told me, he says, as soon as somebody steals from you or rips you off, he says, you call them on it. But when you go in there, you got to make sure that you're ready to quit. Because either you're going to get the money or you're going to have to quit. You're going to have to walk to prove your point. And then you got to be ready for the consequences. So I was on my way in there knowing that I'm going to quit because they're not going to change their minds. They're going to be the tough guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ivan, and I remember Bobby Eaton, and there was a couple other guys in there. They said, Barry, don't go in there. And I said, I said, they just lied to me. I got to figure out why they lied to me. And maybe they just overlooked it. I don't know. So I go into the office and Dusty's in there sitting at the desk. I knock on the door. I said, Dusty, I got to talk to you. And he looked at me and he knew something was wrong. He goes, Barry, baby. He says, sit down. I said, Dusty, I said, I was promised by you that I was going to make the same amount of money for sacrificing the match with the Rock and Roll Express to have the match with Sam Houston. You promised me I was going to make the same amount of money. I got nothing compared to what Ivan Nikita got. And he says, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't do the pay. And I says, well, I would like you to find out what happened. He goes, Barry, I'm not going to get involved in this. And I said, Dusty, you're the booker. You got to help me out here. He says, no. He says, you're going to have to talk to Jimmy. And I says, are you sure you want me to talk to Jimmy? He goes, yeah, go in there and talk to Jimmy. By this time now, I'm steaming. I'm ready to freaking murdered Jim Crockett. So I don't knock on the door. I open the door. I go in there and I go, Jimmy, what the hell is going on here? And he's looking at me like, what? I said, I was promised I was going to make the same amount of money as those guys. I said, is there a reason why I didn't? And he says, yeah, you didn't deserve that money. You were in a match with Sam Houston. It wasn't the same. I said, but I was promised that I was going to make the same amount of money. And he says, well, who promised you that? And I said, well, Dusty told me. He says, well, I have nothing to do with Dusty. So now I'm thinking to myself, now it's like, all right, yeah. So I looked at Jimmy and I said, Jimmy, I said, right at the moment, I feel like taking you and ripping your head off your shoulders. And at that time, I'm 320 and I'm, in shape and ready to go with anybody. And I said, but you know what? I'm not going to do that. I said, I'm going to ask you one more time. Am I going to get the money or what? I said, you're not going to be a scum promoter like what I've always heard about. He looked at me and he goes, I'm just telling you, you don't deserve the money because you didn't have the match. So I said, well, that's the end of me then. I said, I'm not going to give you a notice or anything. I'm done today. So I walked out of there and I got into where all the interviews are, and everybody looked at me and went, oh, shit, you did it. So I said my goodbyes to everybody, and I felt really terrible, to Ivan, Nikita, but I said, you guys got to understand. They said, yeah, we understand. So I ended up quitting, and I went home. I told the wife, I says, well, we got this house here and everything. I'm gonna have to go get a regular job. Probably I'll call Japan. I'll go to Japan so I can work there, 10 weeks a year, whatever. It'd be enough to pay for the house and all that. And then I'll get a job around here. So I was at the gym, Ricky Steamboat's gym. And I told Ricky the story, and Ricky goes, yeah, freaking Crockett, he is kind of the scum of the earth, and he says, let me talk to Vince. I'm going to be on the road tomorrow. And then Earl Hebner calls me up and he says, hey, I'm going to talk to my brother Dave, who's the referee up there. He says, we'll talk to Vince. So I'm thinking, I'm done wrestling for a while and all this. Well, about 2 weeks later, all of a sudden there's a call and it's Vince McMahon. Yeah, is this Barry? And I said, yeah. He goes, Vince McMahon here. He says, I've been hearing nothing but good things about you, and I've watched you on TV. I'd like you to come up here. I'd like to talk to you. So I said, well, when do you want me? He says, well, tomorrow morning I'll have a flight for you in a limo. And I said, well, I don't know if I could go. I'm just saying this in the back of my mind, but I'm all excited, And I said, yeah, I think I could make that, And so I get on there and I go to the office in Connecticut, and I'm with Pat Patterson and, a couple other guys, and meeting everybody in the office. And then Vince comes in and he's got this little booklet with all these pictures on it. And he says, I want you to sign this non-compete. You can't say anything about what I'm telling you. So I signed it. And he says, what do you think of this? And I said, God, I love it. And it was a picture of the Demolition. Well, when you're in a territory, you don't watch the other wrestling because you're on the road so much, you don't see it. So I never saw Bill and Randy Cawley, and I never even heard of the Demolition before. So Vince says, well, what do you think about it? And I said, I would love to do it. Who am I going to be with? He says, well, you're going to be with Bill Eadie. Bill Eadie? And I said, yeah, I met Bill in Atlanta a few times. I don't know him real well. And he says, well, Bill's in Japan right now. When he comes back, I'll meet with him and I'll see if, you're going to work out with him. I said, perfect. So about a week later, Vince called and he says, yeah, Bill really wants you as his partner. He says, why don't we meet up here or, whatever. And so, and I told Vince, I said, Vince, I just need a couple of months off. I need to relax and heal up and train again. And he says, well, let's sign a contract. And why don't you come to a party in Tampa? So it ended up being there. And then that was the start of the whole thing. And that was the Demolition.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's almost serendipitous, isn't it? That, you just quit one promotion and that could really put you on the back foot as far as negotiations go, and then all of a sudden you're in a more prominent position than you were before. Well,
that's where, I got so many friends in this business. I mean, and, I love every one of the guys. There's not one person that I don't like in this business. And it was like Ricky Steamboat started the role and Earl Hebner and, and then, it's people that were in the WWF at the time were friends with friends with Ric Flair and all these guys, and the phone calls go back and forth. What kind of guy is Barry Darsow and this and that, and I've always got along with everybody. So the word was up to Vince already. Yeah, you got to hire this guy, and even if it's not Demolition, he'll work up here somewhere. But I'll tell you what was really wild was the first day. So I got to be a lot closer with Bill because I was with him a lot. Well, I walked in the locker room with Bill, and down in the NWA, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Harley Race, all these huge stars. Well, I got it up to the WWF, and the first person I meet up there, was Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Paul Orndorff, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. I'm walking in this dressing room, and I'm only like 24, 25 years old. And I'm looking at these guys. I'm the youngest guy in the whole territory, pretty much. And I'm walking through, and I'm with Bill. So just being with Bill, I was a legitimate guy then being with him. Mm-hmm. If I wouldn't have had Bill with me, it would have been like, yeah, who's this jabroni? You know what I mean? But I already fit right in with all of these people and everything. And I just sat in a corner, shut up and listened to everybody, never said nothing, told anybody what to do or whatever. I was the young boy, mm-hmm. Listen and learn. And the steps from Bill Watts' territory to Florida Championship Wrestling to being with Ivan, and all of a sudden all that kicked in, and I learned so much more up there. It was like a whole nother stepping stone. It was unbelievable, my career.
I was going to say, actually, with Ivan, you get to Crockett, and then you realize, oh my God, I don't know how to work now. I've got a whole new bunch of things to learn. Yeah. So it's the same thing with WWF as well.
Yeah, and that was big time, I mean, I went from big time in, with Bill Watts. I thought this was incredible. I mean, we're at the Dome in New Orleans, and it's huge. We're filling up this place and all these talent. This is huge. And I go to Florida Championship Wrestling, and there's nobody in the buildings. And then all of a sudden we built it up to where they're all sold out. It's like, no, it's big time there, and then Charlotte, the same thing. Nobody in the buildings. And all of a sudden, everywhere you went, you started filling up these buildings. And it was just like each one you learned and learned and learned,